Good evening, everybody. Welcome to round number 6 of the Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under series. We have made the trek from our last place at Phillip Island in the southern part of Victoria across the border heading west, and we are now just about an hour out of Adelaide at Tailem Bend for the Bend Motorsport Park, a place that this sort of machinery would not have ever seen before, given the age of it and given that this is a pretty new facility in the real life too, having come onto the scene in 2018. Nonetheless, it's going to be an interesting race. There's about 10 or so drivers here at the moment, a little bit less than usual, and given it's grand final weekend as well, I can probably accept the explanation that a number of drivers would probably rather watch a game of football than do some laps around this circuit. But most of the drivers that have been here to date have made their intentions clear, and they are out there on the circuit at the moment just finishing off practice. For the moment, it's just myself commentating this one tonight, Steve DeVries, as was the case all the way back at the beginning of this series, round 1 at the Adelaide Street Circuit. Lewis Wedding, who has accompanied me in the box for the past 4 rounds, having a much deserved night off at the moment, with a lot of work that he's been putting in across at Automobilista Australia. He is one of those that would rather watch the footy, and I can't blame him for that. He's been doing a stellar job with getting a number of things up and running for an upcoming event happening tomorrow over with AMS Oz. There have been a couple of changes in the last week or so. So probably one of those changes that we need to take a look at is the one on your screen right now, the season calendar. There has been a little bit of movement in this calendar, and you can see there the tick boxes next door to the rounds that we've been to already, which are the top 5 as they were. The Bend round 6 tonight and Queensland Raceway round 7. Those were on the original calendar. And then from there, it has changed a little bit. Queensland Raceway being pushed back 1 week, so there will be a gap between tonight's race at the Bend and the race at Queensland Raceway. Now moves 2 weeks from tonight instead of being a weekly occurrence. There is a little bit of conflict going on, so that has been changed. And then Mount Panorama, Singapore and Bahrain all come up the calendar to positions 8, 9 and 10 respectively. They were previously the 11th, 13th and 14th races of the season. Newcastle stays at the bottom, the 15th and final round, and the others that have moved on that calendar are Calder Park, Lakeside, Winton and Sandown stays as the 12th round. So there's a couple of factors and reasons for that. Not only a couple of conflicting dates, but also the Calder Park track being currently modded by John Wright, just a little bit behind schedule, and hence it's been pushed a bit further down the order to be the last round before the Christmas break on December the 12th. So the calendar in terms of the tracks we're going to run, still the same, just the order from round 7 onwards is a little bit different. Change of date for the 7th round, and the calendar changing just a little bit with the reorganising of tracks for round 8 onwards. What also has changed, as is customary each and every week that we do one of these broadcasts, is the points standings coming into the night. So after last round, there has been a little bit of change in this leaderboard. Phillip Island did throw up a couple of different things, and what it did throw up was 2 different winners. So Ozrob, who's not on that list there, he partook in his first race weekend, taking a win and a 4th place, which actually was the result of a penalty post-race that he wasn't able to serve in the last lap. It was through no fault of his own. He ended up taking some evasive action. The game gave him a track cut, and he tried to serve that penalty, but wasn't able to serve it correctly, so he missed out on the pair of wins. That other win went to none other than Jamie Nankervis, who is up there in position 3 on the standings. But the big movement was Shannon Wright, who missed last round, did not score any points therefore, has been overtaken for the championship lead by Nathan Higginson. And most of the drivers in this field, save for the likes of Shannon Wright and Dane Joshua, have decided that they have put their fortunes in a different race car. So that is their one and only change for the season. So Shannon Wright kept keeping the Volvo, Higginson moving from the Mustang to the VL Commodore, and so too the likes of Terry Marwood putting their fortunes in the Volvo 240T, having driven the VK for the early part of the season. Dylan Call doing the same, moving from the RX-7 to the Tirana. And there's a couple of drivers in there that we haven't seen for a little bit. So we didn't see Scott Nolan last time out, and a couple of others a bit further off the screen that we haven't seen for some time. The difference at the top, as you can see there, is 27 points from first to second, and it's a further another 47 points back from Shannon Wright to Jamie Nankervis. So that's your top three. Still plenty to play for in the next couple of rounds leading up to Christmas. Tonight's race, as we said, is the Bend Motorsport Park, and contrary to what you might think, it is the international layout that we are running tonight. So the same circuit that you would have been familiar with for most of the times that supercars have been here in real life, the 4.9 kilometre 18 corner circuit, predominantly right-hand bends, and a number of parts of this circuit modelled on other areas in the world. So the very, very high speed turns 7, 8, 9 and 10, the continuing sequence of right-handers, of course, is a bit of a nod to some other tracks such as Istanbul's Turn 8 in Turkey, and the other replica that they've tried to do over the course of time with Circuit of the Americas in the United States. Sector 1 marker, you can see there, comes up just after the Turn 6 hairpin, so we turn to the left, and then that will be the end of Sector 1, and then the Sector 2 marker is between turns 13 and 14, just that little short straightaway that brings you back around towards the start-finish line. Qualifying, as always, 20-minute session, and the drivers are going to need every minute of that because most of the lap times we're seeing are 2 minutes plus. We've seen a couple get close to breaking the 2-minute barrier, but not quite just yet. So 20 minutes will mean they'll get at least 10 circulating laps if they're fuel for it. And I would imagine a number of drivers will probably do less than that, probably maybe 6 or 7 flying laps if they have to come in and take service, put some new tyres on, fill up the car. And then the race lengths tonight, 2 15-lap races. So if you do your math right, that's about 30 minutes there or thereabouts. And of course there is the compulsory pit stops for tyres that have to be completed at some stage during the race. That race length was revised down during the week. It was set to be a little bit longer, but in the interest of it being a fairly long lap, the idea of bringing the lap count down to make it a little bit easier on the drivers was brought about and was accepted. And to give you an idea, the last circuit we visited was only half a kilometre shorter in Phillip Island at 4.4 kilometres long, but the nature of the circuit meant the lap times were around about the 1 minute 40 mark. This time around an extra half a kilometre, and we're going to add somewhere between 20 and 25 seconds to the lap. So it just gives you an idea of the kind of nature that this circuit is presenting for the drivers in the sorts of cars that they are in of this era, the Group A and Group C cars. Just waiting on the session to count down for qualifying to commence. We're about 40 or so seconds away, and then we will be underway for qualifying. So as it stands right now, drivers that have made the appearance for tonight, looking at Shannon Wright, Terry Marwood in their Volvos, Brett Willis, Termo in the Volvos as well, Nathan Higginson and Dane Joshua both with the VL Commodore, John Wright is also with the VL Commodore, Brian Walsh in his Group C XE Falcon, Dylan Call in the A9X Tirana, and there are a couple of drivers that have jumped in and then jumped back out very, very quickly. So Stephen Shadlow was one of those. He was piloting a Volvo 240T, and likewise another one of the drivers that is on their way, I think, as well. Craig Laws in the Nissan, and I believe Brian Munn may not be too far away as well. So with a bit of luck, we'll have maybe just over 10 drivers, maybe a dozen, if everything goes according to plan. And all we're waiting on now is just for qualifying to commence. And it looks like that is the case. And indeed, qualifying has commenced. So the countdown timer has started. 20 minutes are on the clock for this one. And drivers already making their way out of pit lane. So we're focused there on Brian Walsh's XD Falcon. Just ahead of him is one of the Volvos. As we head out on the opening laps for qualifying. Walsh, of course, sporting the very famous number 17. Oh, sorry, not 17, 27. It's a traditional race number. And, the livery here selected a bit of a nod to Palm Tube Mills Ford Falcon, of course run by Dick Johnson back in the day. Very, very famous motor car. There are a couple of livery changes for a number of drivers this week. Bring those up as the night progresses. And ahead of Brian Walsh on the track at the moment, I believe, there it is, the number 10. Already wringing the neck of that car through turn 12 and now up to the sector 2 split, but of course this is only the outlaps. One of many Volvos in the field. Everybody's starting to put their fortunes in these cars. They seem to be the preferred car of choice. A bit further ahead, I believe we've also got the Nathan Higginson VL Commodore. There it is, the 00. Looks like he's going to have the honour of the first flying laps. So we'll go on board with the race cam over his left shoulder on this high-speed approach to turn 1. Hardest braking point on the circuit. Having to brake quite substantial distance out. He's carried a little bit too much speed there. Ideally offline, or he's offline at turn 1. Kink at turn 2. And then very patient, right and long right-hander. 180 degrees turning to the right. Through turn 4, you barely notice it's there. Turn 5, has to feather the throttle just to make sure the car can get around the corner. It's kicked up a little bit of grass there on the right-hand side. And another hard stop. Oh, back end got away from him there. And puts him offline for turn 6. And now through the continuing sequence of right-handers. So turn 7, 8, car sort of drops away here, turn 9 all the way out to the edge, turn 10, and then finally turn 11 goes the opposite way, a left-hander, and then another right-hander in turn 12, down a gear, and then it gets you onto the short chute here between 12 and 13. It's a tricky braking zone here. A little bit of brake, and it also goes uphill as well, so it feels like you can carry a little bit more speed into the corner, but you've got to be careful not to carry too much brake. Same one here. This is one of those patient corners, turn number 14, and the left-hander again at 15. Always being patient on the throttle as the car continues to turn. Again, not wanting to get sucked in by the corner and wanting to pick up the accelerator a bit earlier than you ideally should. 2 corners to go. A slightly more than a 90-degree right-hander, and then the last corner a little bit less than 90 degrees. You can carry a bit of speed, use all the rip and strip on the exit, and a very hard drive to the line. He's got one of the Volvos behind him at the moment, Higginson. He has a 2:02.754 with Terry Marwood directly behind him, the number 10, going 2.2 seconds faster. So that is a big improvement for Marwood over the Commodore's time. Just goes to show you the kind of performance that this number 10 has at the moment over the cars such as the VL Commodore. Terry Marwood, of course, no stranger to the Holden badge, having run the opening couple of rounds with a VK Commodore, similar livery to Larry Perkins back in the day. And he'd probably feel he's probably being held up a little bit by Nathan Higginson here, who in turn feels that he might be being held up a little bit by the Tirana belonging to Dylan Call. But Call himself, I believe, is on a hot lap, so has no obligation to get out of the way here. These guys are going to have to get past him on their own right, and there's a bit of an incident there, so around goes Dylan Call, and I think he's probably just going to either wait for some cars to go past. No, he's decided to give up the ghost and go back to pit lane. So his out lap, or flying lap rather, didn't go the way that he wanted it to. He decides to go back to pits. So here's Termo, one of the drivers that came onto the scene at the Gold Coast round in paying homage to the notoriety that this car has as being the flying brick by painting his car as a brick. And his return to Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under series in general, not just the ATCC series, netted him a pair of second places at the very long Gold Coast Indy Street Circuit. Amidst all the carnage, he walked away with 86 points for his efforts during the night. And at the moment that sees him as lying equal 13th in the standings, but ahead on countback on Brock Harvey. And our first sub 2-minute lap of the night has been posted. And that was by this man, the man who was the former championship leader before last round, Shannon Wright. Moves up the order and asserts his claim as the man who has been on the front row, I think the most times so far in the series, and continuing that trend for whatever race he turns up at. Unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of the live timing to show the sectors, only the final numbers. As Termo improves 2:02.3, that pops him ahead of Higginson. So at the moment, the Volvos occupy the top 3 positions on the timing tree on your left there. And another Volvo in Stephen Shadlow, position number 8 at the moment. And those are the last of the drivers to have set flying laps. Still got 3 more drivers to go. So Ryan Munn in his VL Commodore, Brett Willis in his Volvo, and Dylan Call and Craig Laws, so 4 more drivers, I apologise, yet to set their first lap times. We'll have a look to see if they're out on circuit very, very shortly. In the meantime, we'll see if Shannon Wright can find a way past the VL Commodore of Dane Joshua, and he's elected to just back off and give himself some space here. The Commodore probably a little bit of a hindrance for him there. There goes teammate through, and Joshua's backed out of it as well. So after all of that, they've just given up the ghost and said, nope, enough's enough, and go back to the pits and get ready to try again. So that then releases the number 20 machine of Brett Willis. And on this particular lap, it's 2:16 for Brett. So not a lap that that car is obviously ultimately capable of. So a little bit of work to do. And here's another one of the drivers that has decided to put his fortunes in a different manufacturer for the remainder of the season. Started out in Adelaide with the Nissan Skyline R31 and has moved up with a number of drivers into the Volvo 240T, which is actually a 4-car team. So that 4-car team comprised of the man on screen in Brett Willis in the number 20. We've got the other one being Terry Marwood in the number 10, Shannon Wright in the number 23, and Jamie Nankervis aboard the 018 machine. So those are the 4 men aboard the, I think as they call them, the Lawn Bowls Racing Volvo team. You see there's some Volvo branding and the Lawn Bowls branding on the back boot of each of these cars. And at the moment, all bar one driver yet to set a lap time, and the one we are waiting on at the moment is Craig Laws. The Dylan Call time at the very bottom there, not a true representation of what he can definitely do behind the wheel. And just as we say that, he moves up to position number 8 with the Tirana. So gets himself together. Flames belching from the left-hand side exhaust on the down change for turn 1. Very neatly through, much better line than a number of drivers we've seen go through there. And he presses on for another flying lap. Dylan Call and Brian Walsh, the only 2 drivers in the field at the moment with Group C machinery, which is the older cars, the cars from the 70s. Everybody else in the Group A machinery, so the mid-80s and newer. At the moment it looks like we've got 3 drivers in the pit lane, so Brian Walsh and John Wright, you can see there with the P symbol next to their name on the timing tree, currently waiting it out in the pits. The other man currently in the pit lane, actually it was Craig Laws for a minute, and he's gone back out onto track. Yet to see what sort of lap time Craig Laws can do. Go back and see if we can pick up where Craig Laws is. Here he is. Again, another slightly different liveried car from the last time we've seen this machine. Still carrying car number 078. This Group A car might be a nice handling car around some of these corners. It's the same sort of trait that the Volvo 240Ts enjoy, being able to corner a lot better than their heavier counterparts. This Nissan sort of fits in the middle between the heavier Commodores and the lighter Volvos, and sort of a bit more developed in terms of cornering capability than the Holdens. Volvo seems to be the all-rounder out of everybody. We really haven't seen anybody really work this car the way that anybody did until we saw Dave Davidson make an appearance at Phillip Island last round. Craig Laws the 216-1, opening salvo 5 for him. Dave Davidson last time somehow managed to find the magic medicine that made the Nissan tick, and he put that to good use last time out. He was right in the thick of it for a lot of the races. We have a look at his finishing positions. Unfortunately, through a series of issues for him during the night, he ended up 10th and 12th in the 2 races that took place. So it didn't go according to plan for him in the race, but he did show that this particular car can be very capable in the right hands. We did have an improvement from Dylan Call the last time around as well, so he's moved into the 209s, and at the moment he's still 0.8 of a second behind Brett Willis's Volvo there. The closest gaps that you can see there on your timing screen actually belong to Termo and Higginson in 3rd and 4th, and that's not something I thought I'd be saying, because these 2 guys know each other pretty well, as Termo just dips a wheel in the grass there and actually probably helped him get around those two corners in turn 14 and 15 a lot better than what he probably thought he was going to take them in. He carried a bit too much speed and very lucky on that occasion. Termo's going to be looking to get away from the Commodore behind. Make sure he doesn't lose third place. At the moment they're both on the same row. Firing down the straight is an improvement this time from Termo. The answer is no. It was a 2:06.0 that time around. So he's on another flying lap. And he's got a little bit of lap traffic. Yeah, which car is that has just made its appearance? I'm wondering if that actually might be, it's the 44 car. Just having a look at my list there. Not sure who the 44 car is, and maybe it might be a late switch. Having a look on the list here, 444 was Brendan Ross when he made his appearance in the Mazda. This may be somebody that is a late join to the server. So just not showing up on the live timing at the moment. New fastest lap for Shannon Wright, 1 minute 59.717. So that lowers his best benchmark by a couple of tenths. In the practice session just gone, it was Wright and Marwood who were fractionally apart. They were 76 thousandths of a second apart after both clocking 2 minute point fours, with Wright the quicker of the two by that very same margin. And at the moment there's a bit of a lock-up going down here into turn 6. He's just showing off a little bit now. We've been the only man under the 2 minute barrier. And Terry Marwood has improved from his best qualifying lap. His best practice lap. He's found another 10th. And Termo still hasn't been able to shake the half a second margin that Higginson follows him by, and we're getting down to the last few minutes of this qualifying session, or the business end, they like to call it. So Higginson's just coming up to the final corner now, so there's one more lap in it for him, at least, possibly two, if he's got the fuel on board to do so. He's going to have to make both of them count. And then behind him on track, there's the Brian Walsh machine in the pits. There goes Craig Laws. And now the number 10 Volvo, piloted by Terry Marwood. He'll get one more. Behind him on track, not the safety car in pit lane. It's 23 of Shannon Wright. We're now just looking to see who the last men across the line are. The ones that are likely to only get one more lap. So there is the number 20, the Brett Willis machine. There's Dane Joshua directly behind him in the 35. So they've both gone through. So they're just about going to be on their last laps. Brian Munn, John Wright and Brian Walsh all in the pit lane. So no further improvements for those gentlemen. They do not have enough time to get back out on the track and get another lap in. As, I was about to say, I thought Brett Willis was allowing Dane Joshua to go through there, who'd centred at turn 6, but returned fire and returned serve on the exit of turn number 6. And let's see where everybody is in the running order. So Dylan Paul is down at the bottom end of the circuit. He's probably going to get, this will be his last lap actually, so he's down at turn 6 right now, so this is his last flying lap. Go have a look and see where Nathan Higginson is. So he was the one that crossed the line with a handful of seconds to go, and if he's got fuel in the car. He does get one more lap, so here he goes. What does he do this time around? He doesn't improve, so 2:08.111 on that occasion, so some 6 seconds off his previous lap, or his previous best rather. So he has no choice, he has to go again. The man that he's chasing is Termo. He's doing a little bit of lawn mowing there with his right-hand side tyres, and he's coming up to the last 2 corners on the circuit. So this will be his last lap. Shannon Wright has parked it. He thinks that he's done enough. So too Brett Willis. He believes that he's done enough. If Shadlow can find a couple of seconds, he will jump, or a couple of tenths, he will jump those guys. And Termo has decided he thinks he's safe as well and comes into pit lane. So now all attention will turn to where the rest of the cars are. Terry Marwood's down at turn 6. Dane Joshua is on the run up to turn 14, by the looks of it, is he? No, he's actually getting one more lap, sorry. He's down at turn 5, so he will get one more by the skin of his teeth. And there we go, Stephen Shadlow is aboard the 44. So that's what the confusion was. Had him on our screen here as number 22 from the days where he had run the RX-7, and they've now confirmed he's in car 44. So last laps for Shadlow and for the man ahead of him in Dylan Call. Are these guys able to find some improvement? No, Dylan Call says no. Shadlow does some pirouettes across the grass. So that just leaves the 2 men behind the VL Commodores to find some improvement or not. And what is the end result for Nathan Higginson? The answer is no improvement. 2:05 flat that time around, so that sees him done and dusted. And Dane Joshua, 2 corners to go. His best time of 2:03.2. Last time around was 2:04.8. And very wide at the final corner, and not only some lawn mowing, but playing in the sandpit there as well. And that's him done and dusted. So that means the grid is set for qualifying, flowing over into the first of 2 15-lap races tonight. Shannon Wright and Terry Marwood off the front row, with Shannon Wright the only man sub 2 minute tonight with a 1:59.7 to Terry Marwood's 2 minute flat 2 minute .353. Termo and Higginson at the end of the day couldn't be split half a second apart. They didn't improve and they didn't find any more gains on each other over the course of the last 10 minutes of the session, so 3rd and 4th respectively, Volvo and VL Commodore. Dane Joshua and Brian Walsh 5th and 6th, which is a good effort from Brian Walsh, all things considered, with the Group C machinery, the XE Falcon. So those guys 5th and 6th. Brett Willis took his Volvo into P7 and starts alongside another Volvo in Stephen Shadlow. And then Dylan Call and John Wright, pair of Holdens on the 5th row of the grid. Dylan Call in the Tirana, John Wright in the newly liveried VL. And then Brian Munn, position 11, but we did see that there were 1 or 2 drivers in that one that came and went from the server. Craig Laws was one of those, so hopefully he's able to get back in. And if he does, that would mean we end up with 12 runners for the race that's about to take place in around 3.5 minutes from now, as the countdown timer is still running. There is a little bit of a break between the sessions, just allows the drivers to relax, go and evacuate their bowels, get a drink, get themselves ready to go for what can only be said will be a little bit of a torture test, if anything is to be gone by the last couple of rounds. The rounds have gotten a little bit longer than usual, and hence cutting down the number of laps just to keep it sort of to a reasonable time frame. We expect that if the guys out front are doing sort of low 2-minute laps, that this race of 15 minutes will go for around about 35 minutes, and then the same for race number 2. Factoring in that, of course, drivers do have to come in and stop for tyres, so there will be at least 1 or 2 laps there that are a little bit of outliers compared to normal speed, as they have to slow down to get into pit lane, conduct their tyre change, and then get going again. And then, of course, the chaotic reverse grid race that takes place as the second race of the night after the first. So there will be a short break between race 1 and race 2 for that grid to be set, and then away we go for the second race a little bit later on. While we're waiting for the countdown timer to finish expiring, there is an event coming up tomorrow on Sunday the 25th of October that, if you are avid viewers of this channel, you'll know what's going on. It is Automobilist Australia's Bathurst 500, with the race day broadcast set to start around about midday Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, and it has a little bit of an international flavour this year for one of the major events that they've run. Not only have they got drivers competing from both Australia and New Zealand, but also a couple of drivers from overseas, one from Canada, one from the United States, and I think one of the Australian-based drivers, I believe, actually has some Singaporean heritage as well. So it is very much an international Bathurst 500 that'll take place tomorrow, broadcast here on the Outworld Broadcasting channel. So please, when you see the stream link go up a little bit later on tonight with the countdown timer, please support the stream, come and watch us tomorrow, and it's sure to be a great race. At least 4 or 5 different driver pairings and cars can win that race, and it looks like we're going to have an 18 or 19 car field for an event that the crew at Automobilist Australia have been building up to for the last couple of months, and it's got a very good following and very good interest. And the broadcast on Thursday night of the qualifying and top 10 shootout, one of the most highly rated broadcasts that we've actually done here on this channel. So for those of you that do watch it, when you have the chance to do so, we thank you very much, not just for watching this, but also for watching the other videos on this channel. Right, we're not too far away from a race start here. We've got the 2-minute warning that everything is just about in order. Cars lining up on the grid. And if we go to the onboard shot, there's the view from the safety car at the back of the field, which will be pulled in as soon as the green flag drops. You can see there just off the back row, there's Brian Munn's Commodore. Ahead of him, John Wright, and then directly ahead of us on the camera picture there is the Dylan Call Tirana. We are just going to wait for about another minute or so for these drivers to get going. No formation lap in this particular format. Just a get in the car and drive it to its maximum extent. So you can see here, Volvo's occupy the top 3 spots. Commodore's the next 2, then a Falcon, then another 2 Volvos, and then a trio of the General's men, 1 Tirana and 2 VL Commodores. Countdown timer just flashing away on our left-hand side of the screen here says 20 seconds to go until the light sequence starts. It looks like it's about to start now. Revs are rising. Someone's bouncing on the limiter back there. I'm not sure who it is. We're going to get a race start for race 1 of the Bend Twin Sprint for ACADS. And already the VL Commodore's making a break for it up the middle. They've got a huge horsepower advantage coming up this main straight. and they've rounded up all the Volvos and rounded them up quickly, and it's Higginson and Joshua who have moved through to lead. Oh, there's someone skating off there. What's that? That's the number 20 car that has gone barreling across the inside of the circuit. Number 20's Brett Willis completely missed the braking point and flew across the infield. Higginson still leads away, but Dane Joshua looks like he's the one that's now having to play rear tail gunner because the Volvos are coming, and here comes Shannon Wright, but the door very, very firmly shut by Joshua at turn 6. While they're rounding up through turns 7 and 8, we will take the opportunity just to bring ourselves and the safety car back to pits. And we'll now pick up the action. Ryan Walsh has had a pretty reasonable start. Started 6th, he's moved up 1 spot to 5th. And now this really tricky part of the circuit. This is where the Commodores are a little bit lackluster. They just struggle to get the power down. And it's where the Volvos are very, very strong through the tight, twisty bits. They've made a break for it. Well, they're still trying to make a break for it. Formation flying for the youngsters in this series. Marwood now moves ahead of Shannon Wright, so that's a change for position in the last few seconds. That happened down at turn 14. So Shannon Wright said, you know what? I've had a go on this opening half a lap. Why don't you have a go and see what you can do? Terry Marwood, of course, won quite comfortably the opening race of the season at Adelaide. His one and only win. He has had 4 other podium finishes since. His last round at Phillip Island resulted in a non-finish and a non-start for the second race. So he's got a bit of a point to prove. But he does know what it's like to drive Holden machinery, so he'll know the ins and outs, all the weaknesses and strengths of the cars. And the top 4 well and truly have made a break for it. Been a pretty good start from John Wright as well. He's found his way through the field. He started on the second to last row of the grid. Of course, new livery on that car for this particular round, still the same number. He's now moved ahead of Brian Walsh, who's fending off not only Turmo, but he's also fending off the advances of Dylan Call and Stephen Shadlow as well. Turmo tries to go around the outside at turn 5. That's a very, very brave move, and he's got the job done. So that's a fantastic move by Turmo, just seizing the initiative, carrying so much more mid-corner speed, and rounds up the XE Falcon quite comfortably in the end at turn 5. Oh, Walsh with 2 wheels in the grass as well, and there's more carnage behind. So Walsh with 2 wheels in the grass. Dylan Call did the same thing, just worse, and he's going to have to come back on. He's going to be second to last. So that takes him out of what was a ripping battle. And while all that's been going on, Dane Joshua has been rounded up by the Volvos of Marwood and Wright. So not sure if that was a mistake or if they was passed on genuine pace. But he has been demoted off the podium to 4th place, and he now leaves Higginson to do all the defending all on his own. Standing lap times from the very first lap. Higginson 2:11.5. Marwood and Wright 2:12.213. Dane Joshua was a 2:12.1. In terms of flying laps, this is going to be rattling off pretty quickly here. So Higginson's 2:02.0 very quickly surpassed by Marwood's 2:01.9 and Shannon Wright's 2:01.5. And just judging by, there's a little bit going on here as well as John Wright's had a moment somewhere, and he's dropped a lot of time down to 2:11, moves him down to position number 9. And just judging by the lap times that a few of the drivers set on that last tour, Dane Joshua's 2:05.6 probably indicates that he made a mistake somewhere on the previous lap rather than being passed by the pure pace of the Volvos. John Wright's time probably the same sort of thing. A 2:06 would have been what we would have been expecting of him. And a mistake for 211. Higginson wide. Higginson very wide at turn 6, at 7, 8, and 9. And that opened the door for Terry Marwood, and Marwood is through. So, a part of the circuit where it's very difficult to get your braking right, because there is a little bit of undulation through that multi-apex right-hander that is turns 7, 8, 9, and 10. And it was running off the road at turn 8 was Nathan Higginson. If you get too wide there and you put two wheels on the grass, at the pace you're carrying, you're not going to be able to save the car. And now this is music to Marwood's ears, because he's checked out already to the tune of a second. And here goes Shannon Wright, very firmly down the inside at turn 17. Pass completed and job done for the moment. Higginson's going to argue the point up to turn 18. And Wright lets him have it. Probably the smart thing to do. There's no point in getting involved in a battle of this nature this early in the race. There's still pit stops to shake out. Marwood now clocks the fastest racing lap of a 2:01.4. You can just see that Higginson's VL just motors away from Shannon Wright's Volvo down the straight. And that's purely the only advantage that the Commodore really has at a circuit like this. It hasn't got straights like circuits such as Queensland Raceway or Sandown, where it can really stretch away continuously over the course of a race. It needs to have the right balance, and it doesn't have the ballerina sort of goings for it through a lot of these tight corners and change the direction. It is a bit sluggish, and there you can see why it is right now. He's really having to fight the car, and the car's jumped sideways on him as well. That very nearly opens the door for Shannon Wright, and in fact it does. He decides to go the long way around at turn 10 and then position himself for 11, and then he takes the position away. So very, very smart, very, very brave move there for Shannon Wright. But he's run wide on the exit of 12. And now there's a bit of a straight here for Higginson to fight that position back. But he's very out of control. And I think now this position might be secured if Wright can continue just to edge away a little bit through these next sequence of corners. But Higginson's staying with him, and there's contact. And Higginson has rotated the car, and then that moves Dane Joshua back onto the podium. So it's a bit of a half-hearted lunge at turn 15, just before the change of direction for 16. Higginson got it all wrong, and now his customary slideshow as a result. And Dane Joshua has also moved ahead of Shannon Wright, so I'm not sure what happened there. I think Shannon Wright has run off the road, and now he's decided he's going to take his pit stop. So he's the first of the callers onto pit road. The 80 km/h speed limit. Here he comes, and to a complete stop. So tyre stop for Shannon Wright being completed as we speak. Moves Higginson back onto the podium, moves Turmo up to 4th, and there is a bit of a gap back to Stephen Shadlow in the Volvo as well, and he now goes through. So too Brett Willis, Brian Walsh, John Wright now also calling for the pits as well. So the men with the same surnames both coming into the pits, and Shannon Wright now on the move. So it's 2:11 that time around for Shannon Wright. Got to factor in that it was the in lap, but there was also a mistake in that lap as well. So you probably need to knock off a couple more seconds to get a true indication of what the in lap really is. I'd say it's pretty likely to be around about a 2:07. And he was very lucky not to get held up in the pits for too much longer, as he would have been behind the Tirana of Dylan Call. So we're on lap 5 of 15, and this man has pretty much motored away since he took the lead of this race in Terry Marwood. Last lap around was the fastest race lap yet again, so consecutive, I think it was 3 consecutive laps actually, he has lowered the bar in terms of his fastest racing lap, and he continues on for one more. So lap 5 and lowers it again, 2:09.87. So have gone from a 2-minute 2:01.9 on lap 2 and has continually chopped a couple of tenths of a second off each lap for the last 4 laps, and has now worked his way down to a fastest racing lap of a 2:09.87. Drivers behind are starting to be a bit more inconsistent, and we have callers on pit road again. So we've got 2 in there, Turmo and Higginson. Higginson out of position 3, Turmo out of position 4. And there's a change for position between Brett Willis and Brian Walsh. And they're still exchanging positions down the front straightaway. The Falcons definitely going to have the legs down the front straight, much as the Commodores got the advantage over the Volvos as well. And Brian Walsh fights the position back and holds off Brett Willis for a little bit longer. That's well done and good driving by Brian Walsh. And this is going to be critical here, especially for Shannon Wright, who is really starting to march up onto the back of this pair now. Oh, Brian Walsh's car just sort of slid at the wrong part of the circuit, and now he's having to go super defensive to hold on to what is position 3 as it stands right now. He's got fistfuls of opposite lock, he's got slide going on as well, and now here comes Shannon Wright, and he's going to try and round up Brett Willis in the next little bit here, and he's not quite done the job just yet. Because Shannon Wright has made his stop, he needs to bypass these guys pretty quickly. He's managed to get past Brett Willis into team communications, of course, and Brian Walsh slides right out to the edge of the track at the most inopportune moment for him. Just opened the door for Shannon Wright, but could not walk through the open door at that particular point. Was just a little bit hesitant, a little bit worried that Walsh was going to come back at him there. Walsh doing his best to defend here, but now he's wide. He's skated off the circuit, and he's well and truly off in the boonies, as fellow commentator Lewis Wedding would say. And not only has he dropped a position to Shannon Wright, but he's also dropped one to Stephen Shadlow. And what happened to Brett Willis? He was right in the thick of it as well. Oh, there's a bit of collision work going on there while she lets Shadlow have that back. Brett Willis must have had a mistake somewhere, because he has dropped out of that little battle, and behind him is Nathan Higginson, who of course has already stopped, and Higginson now, he doesn't have to get past Brett Willis because he decides to make the next port of call for himself, pit lane. Appears we've lost Brian Munn from this race just in the last couple of minutes as well. First of the retirements. Don't believe he's had a huge amount of practice in the last couple of days. Doesn't look like he's in the Discord chat either, so a possible internet disconnect for him. Now, with all the pit stops still fully yet to shake out, your effective race leader is indeed Shannon Wright. He's got a comfortable margin at the moment over Nathan Higginson. He's the next man stop, and Turmo, on corrected order at the moment, is third. The next question we have is, out of the top runners, who is going to come into the pits? At the moment, it's Terry Marwood in for his compulsory stop. And the next man we need to keep an eye out for is this man. And very late decision, actually. Oh, did he get down to the limit? Did he get down to the speed limit? That was an extremely late decision by Joshua to get into the pits. That'll cycle Shannon Wright through to the race lead. And the next men in the queue yet to stop are this man on screen, number 44 of Stephen Shadlow, and Brian Walsh behind. And that's the second time Shadlow's done a little bit of mowing there. Walshy, I think, lets Nathan Higginson go, and he does. So the next question is, where's Higginson going to come out relative to Dane Joshua? And the answer is far, far behind. So Shannon Wright goes through. There's Dane Joshua. So Joshua, out of all of that, is only within 3.5 seconds of Shannon Wright, but we do expect with the superior cornering pace that the Volvos have, that they should march away and consolidate this one. And Higginson now up to 4th. Walsh, Turmo in 5th. Shadlow in the pits. So that then just leaves Brian Walsh as the only driver yet to take service. Just having a look at the last lap times to give you an idea of the out lap for Terry Marwood, a 2:30.0, so that's some 30 seconds off what his best lap is. Factoring in as well, you do need to come in and slow down for your in lap as well. Probably going to add another 5 or 10 seconds to that one. And he has controlled this race pretty much since getting to the front after the opening couple of laps was pretty much the General's men's show, with Higginson and Joshua well and truly in front and fending off all attacks from all avenues. Looks like Dylan Call's in the pits for a second time, so that's now going to put him a lap down if he doesn't get out in time. He's actually just gotten out just ahead on the track of the race leader. There he is, front of shot, as he says, exit stage left. And Marwood probably will round him up in the next couple of laps. Personal best last time around for 3 drivers. Shannon Wright, P2, 2:01 flat. Turmo, 2:02.36. John Wright turning his best lap as well at 2:07.8. So happy hour for a couple of the drivers. And Brian Walsh finally now says, I need to come in and take my compulsory stop. There he is in the lane. Turmo goes through. And the next question is, where is Stephen Shadlow in regards to Brian Walsh? Because that's the next man he was fighting with after all of this. And Shadlow rounding turn 17. And now up to the final corner. So is Brian Walsh on the move yet in pit lane? And the answer is yes. So this is going to be extremely tight at the pit lane exit. Can Walshy hang on to P6? Or is he going to have a fight on his hands with Shadlow's Volvo? The Volvo's going to round him up, I think, here at speed, and he has. So very, very tight at pit exit. But with the better boots on all 4 corners of the number 27 XE Falcon, I'd like to see Brian Walsh give Stephen Shadlow the real hurry up here as we ride on board over his left shoulder. Different lines as well. You see Shadlow taking a much wider approach into turn 5. And Walshy just a little bit shallower at some of these corners, just not using the road to its full extent. And look at this sequence of corners, here we go. And you're staying a bit too close to the apex and a bit too close to the right-hand side in some parts for this 4-part right-hander. And they both run off the road on the exit of turn 10. But it looks like Walsh may have got the better of that little sequence of corners, able to carry a bit more speed. Oh, big mid-corner twitch for Stephen Shadlow. Put him out wide. Volvo is vulnerable here, and Walsh has got to run. So up to the braking zone for turn 12. Shadlow a bit wide. Walsh with bit of opposite lock. And Walsh is right in this game now. He is starting to apply the blowtorch to the back of the number 44 Volvo. He's actually making the car dance quite nicely through some of these corners where the Volvo has its strength, so a bit of a learning experience for both drivers. or having to come down an extra gear late as well. And all that work that he's just done in the last half a lap or so, he's just lost. Couldn't get the thing changed down quickly enough for the second to last corner. But this is where you'll start to make up the time, because when the Volvo is not that quick in a straight line, the Falcon definitely has some legs, much like the Commodore. And gains a little bit, but not a huge amount. So Shadow got a good exit. Walsh, oh! Very, very late on the brakes for Brian Walsh. Somehow managed to get it stopped. But he is wringing the neck of this Ford XE Falcon for all it's worth right now. He's got 6 more laps to get that job done. It is the closest battle on track at the moment. The next man behind these guys is Brett Willis, about 4 seconds away. Terry Marwood lowers his best lap of the race again, not by very much. And now it's a 2 minute .967, where it was a 987 before, if I remember correctly. He's only just done that in the last tour of the circuit. So he's on lap 11. The guys watching on screen at the moment on lap 10. Oh, Walsh is off at the moment, off the grass, and struggling to get it back on. That's on the exit of turn number 12. So that pretty much gives up his immediate challenge to Stephen Shadlow, and now it's just going to be about keeping Volvo of Brett Willis behind him. The lap times for these two gentlemen. Walsh's last lap time at 2 minutes 16.6, but he was in the pit lane for some of that. And Brett Willis has now gone past Brian Walsh with that mistake down at turn 14. Walsh is going to fight it here. Oh, just sort of half-hearted. Oh, half-hearted lunge at 17. And the new rules that came into effect during the week about making contact and giving up the position. Walsh is very much aware of those. And there's a little mistake for Brett Willis off the final corner, getting it all crossed up, getting the car hung up on the outside curb, jumping sideways. And Walsh says, I'll have that position back, thank you very much. So mistakes are plenty for these two at the moment in their battle over position 7. And up the inside goes Brett Willis. So these two have changed positions faster than they've changed their underpants in the last half a minute to a minute or so. They continue to press on. Quick check of the running order. This man in a class of his own at the moment. Terry Marwood on the previous lap lowered the benchmark again. So lowers it down to a 2 minute .385 for the fastest lap of the race, which is pretty much on par with what he did as his qualifying lap in the session just gone. His qualifying lap was a 3:53 on the end, with 2 minutes in front, and race lap at 2 minute .385 at the moment, and his best lap in practice was a 2 minute .484. So extremely consistent fastest laps through all the sessions so far for Terry Marwood. The only thing that he didn't have the distinction of getting was pole position. That went to Shannon Wright, who was the only man to dip under the 2 minute barrier. The strange thing for Shannon Wright is I think he's just quite content to sit for second place at the moment, knowing that he has some pace in that Volvo. He really has just settled into a rhythm, just consistently doing 201s. His best lap of a 201 flat, and last time around 201.587. And I think just now that he's got a fairly decent gap of 16 or so seconds to Marwood, and he's got plenty of gap behind to Dane Joshua. You can just see him back a shot, 10 seconds there. He can afford a little bit of luxury just to explore the limits of this car around the track and just get himself ready for the next race coming up in probably about 10 or so minutes time. We've got about 6 to 7 minutes left in this one, and then be a very quick 5-minute break, and then we'll be on to race number 2 for the night, which of course is the reverse grid race. 2:02.6 that time around for Shannon Wright as he explores the limits of the track. Since getting through to position 3, Dane Joshua's just kept his nose clean, kept himself going along quite nicely. Comfortably third place podium position. Came into the series with a little bit of mixed fortunes. 7th and 6th at Barbagallo was his opening couple of results, and then since then a run of 4 straight podiums. So a win in the first race at the Gold Coast Indy layout, backed up with a 3rd, and a pair of 2nds at Phillip Island last time out, at a track where the Commodore probably wasn't suited to be the best car on the night, but he was able to somehow keep that Commodore on the blacktop, where a lot of other drivers found trouble, and at the moment set to take home another podium finish to make it 5 on the trot, which would be the current best streak in the series at the moment. Actually, no, I won't, sorry, I do apologise. The current best streak is Shannon Wright, who had a run of 6 podium finishes from Adelaide through to Barbagallo. And of course he missed the Gold Coast opening race and then came in for the second race and won it. So Shannon Wright's podium streak was 7 podiums in 8 races, whereas Dane's currently working on 5 consecutive at the moment. So we're on the penultimate lap. Oh, and as we're talking about him, he does the usual thing of the commentator's curse and runs off the road at turn 17. Nathan Higginson was in that battle early at the very beginning of the race. He's just drifted away and finds himself mainly doing lap times in the 2:07, 2:08 range. Again, plenty of gap to make up in front, not really fussed about it. Termo some 28 seconds in arrears. Again, has just been plodding along. Probably happy to take home position 5 at this stage. Puts him pretty much where on the row that he started for the next return race. He started 5th and will finish 5th, and that would then put him in 6th place for the reverse grid as it stands right now. Brett Willis has finally, after a couple of laps ago, managed to well and truly get past Brian Walsh, backs it in to turn 14. And Walsh is starting to catch again here. I thought he'd broken the back for a little bit, but Walsh is starting to bring this margin down. These guys have only got a lap to go because they are, of course, 1 lap down. Or getting close to 1 lap down, I think. No, they are about to go a lap down, so they're currently on the lead lap. Not for very much longer, because here comes Terry Marwood, and then you've got Shadlow in the 44, and then John Wright and Dylan Call all 1 lap down. But Marwood is about to round up Brian Walsh, so now he is officially 1 lap down. And the pits are now closed, so you have to, if you hadn't taken your stop prior to now, then you were in a bit of trouble. But everybody thankfully has stopped. And plain sailing for Terry Marwood. Now, the important thing here for Brian Walsh is if he wants to have any shot at catching Brett Willis, he needs to stay on the back of Terry Marwood. But Marwood's way too quick at the moment. And it looks like he will be comfortably taking race victory here in race 1 this evening. On the horn to Brett Willis ahead, just to let him know I'm on my way, mate. Don't hold me up. Don't have a crash with me. This will be my first win since the opening round, the opening race of the opening round rather, some 5 or 6 weeks ago. Imagine we're actually past the 1/3 distance mark. We chalked that up last round at Phillip Island. This was round 6:15, so getting close to halfway through the season. Terry Marwood is going to do himself plenty of favours with this race victory here. It will well and truly put him back in the hunt for line honours at the end of the season. Just one corner to go. Pretty much since he got past the Commodores early on in the piece, it has been a faultless drive for the man with the number 10 on the door, formerly the number 11 on the door. And Terry Marwood salutes in race number 1 at the Bend Motorsport Park here in Adelaide this evening. And to make it double delight, it's a Team Lawn Bowls Racing Volvo 240T 1-2 with Shannon Wright home in second. Dane Joshua continues his podium streak. Will make it a third place finish, his second third place finish of the campaign. Oh, very, very close run thing with John Wright there, who was off at the final corner and came back on, nearly speared into the side of Joshua. He would have, his heart would have skipped a beat with that one. But he is home for position 3. And only 3 more cars on the lead lap. So 4 cars a lap down and 6 cars on the lead lap. The next one of those to come across the line will be the current series leader in Nathan Higginson with a 4th place finish. He has racked up 3 4-place finishes on the season to go with his 3 podiums. And he's finished no lower than 7th in all races contested so far this season. And he's now safely across the line. 2 more cars to cross the line. Termo in car number 51. The car number, of course, made famous by Greg Murphy in supercars, and the same car number that he'll be running in tomorrow's Bathurst 500 over at Automobilista Australia. And the last man that we await for crossing the finishing line is Brett Willis, who's being given the hurry up by Terry Marwood here, who's already crossed the line and is pretty much following home his teammate for a pit lane entry. And there's 6th place for Brett Willis quite comfortably in the end. Cars already down at the bottom end of turn 1, getting their donut on. There's Termo going round and around. Brian Walsh, I'm not sure if he's having some problems there trying to find the gear that he wants to make this work. At the end of the day, he was home in 7th. Down to the Termo doing the right thing here. Here he goes. Stephen Shadlow home in 8th place. John Wright 9th. And then 10th place at the end of the day went to Dylan Call. And the sole retirement of that one was the Brian Munn 05 VL Commodore, which if I look at my timing, shows that he only did about 4 or 5 laps after that one. So that was race number 1 out of 2 for the night. And while the drivers celebrate at the end of the front straightaway, we'll have a bit of a look at the point standings and see what sort of gains that everybody has made over the course of that particular round. And only 1 race in, of course, but we have a look at the standings, and if we put up the point standings coming into tonight, that's what it was. And if we have a look now with the finishing positions from race 1, second place to Shannon Wright and fourth place to Nathan Higginson, that margin has been closed down. So it's been closed down from what was a very handy 27-point margin there. It has now come down to 19 after race number 1. The points allocations for race 1, you get 38 points for race 2 and 30 points for fourth position in race 1 there as well. And then the second race tonight, it's a little bit more, but it's still an 8-point margin. The maximum any driver can walk away with at the end of the night is 90 points. The gaps are pretty much identical in terms of how many points difference it is between first, second, third, fourth. Also on that list, we have a look to see how Terry Marwood has fared. He has now jumped Jamie Nankervis, who was absent tonight, into third place overall. So he's moved up to 273 points. So he is outright third. Nankervis still in fourth. And Dane Joshua, here you can see there, is fifth. Still maintains fifth place. John Wright still in sixth. Dylan Call still seventh. Scott Nolan still eighth. Another one of the absentees tonight. Brian Munn still ninth. And Craig Law still 10th. So only a little bit of movement in the top 10 on your graphic there. Outside of the top 10, sixth place finish for Brett Willis sees him move up to 11th, and he is still another 14 points away from being inside the top 10. He's 14 points behind Craig Laws. And then other drivers that have moved up. Termo is now only 2 points behind Brett Willis, so those guys, very important, they keep fighting. And by the end of the night, they will probably both be in the top 10. Shadlow moved up to 13th place. He was originally sitting in 18th after all of that. And then Brian Walsh has found a couple of points as well, and he's now currently 15th overall. He's actually only 2 points behind his good mate Glenn Miles. So Glenn not here tonight, and I'm sure Brian Walsh would love to get another one up on him between now and the end of the night. Might take this opportunity for a short break, and we'll be back with race 2 in just a few moments. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching round number 6 of the Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under Series in ATCC machinery. Just having a little bit of a look at the logs from the last race. There was only one driver that ended up with a pit lane penalty for speeding in pit lane. We actually thought that Dane Joshua was very close to picking up a penalty for a late decision to get into pit lane. Turns out he actually did get down to the speed limit. The only man who picked up a penalty in that one was John Wright. He was actually 17 kilometres over the speed limit getting into pit lane at the speed trap. So he unfortunately ended up having to do another drive-through, and that dropped him down the order. It's good to see as well here that for doing a stop inside the pit lane as well, it's roughly around 42 to 43 seconds with what is just a very simple tyre change that includes about 20 or just over 20 seconds for a transit time on pit lane, and then the rest of it taken up in the stop, about 22 seconds in the stop. So that gives you an idea. It's roughly about a 42 or 43 second time loss on pit lane when it comes to having to serve the compulsory stops. Of course, there are the two tyre compounds. There is the softer compound and the medium compound. And we are getting ready for the second race of the night. Full reverse grid. Only one driver who unfortunately did not finish the last race in Brian Munn has been unable to rejoin. And as we have a look to the grid there, you can see at the very head of the field, it's going to be the it's not the Stephen Shadlow car. He's actually behind on the grid there. The timing on the left-hand side here, broadcast position is a little bit inaccurate. It's actually in fact going to be Dylan Call and John Wright, followed by Stephen Shadlow and Brian Walsh. And then back behind them, two Volvos. Looks like we've got Brett Willis and Termo side by side. Same row, starting row for Termo. Then the two Holden VL Commodores of Higginson and Joshua. And then the men who finished positions 1 and 2 at the tail end of the field in Shannon Wright and Terry Marwood. So the first race for tonight's proceedings went just over 30 minutes. And we're about to get another very, very tasty 15-lap encounter for race 2 tonight. Revs are rising, bouncing on the rev limiters. They drop the clutch, and away we go. And a few of them missed the jump, especially Shadlow. Shadlow missed a jump, and it's coming together between Higginson and Joshua. Termo as well got turned around. Shadlow's been turned around too. It's a big calamity at the start of this race, and those guys are all going to have to... Oh, look at Brett Willis outbraked himself again. Went straight on at turn 1. The same thing that he did in race 1. It's a little bit worse. Didn't take anybody out. John Wright is going to lead the field on lap 1 from Dylan Call. Nathan Higginson somehow, after that contact, has managed to keep going. Brian Walsh into 4th, Terry Marwood up to 5th. And after all of that, what a calamity at the start for Dane Joshua, Shadlow and Termo. Somehow or another, I don't know how he managed to keep that going in the right direction. Dylan Call's had an off just while we were getting the safety car pulled in to pit lane. And now Higginson is really giving John Wright the hurry up here. On board. John Wright a little bit out of control here. And, very nearly speared across the track. Good situational awareness from Higginson. But now he's got Marwood and Wright for company. So John Wright going ultra defensive down here into turn 12. And Higginson's got to pick his moment here as to what he decides to do, or he's going to get swamped by the Volvo over his left rear quarter panel at the moment. And this is a very tight-knit group. Higginson needed to clear John Wright in that little chute between turns 12 and 13. But he hasn't been able to get the move done. Is he going to try for the switchback here? Try and get the drive out of the corner? Yes, he does. He gets the drive out because Wright makes the mistake and drifts wide and puts 2 tyres in the grass. So Higginson through to the race lead after lap 1. John Wright into second. Now, who's that coming in the pits? That's Terry Marwood. So that's a very early stop and probably a smart stop, getting out of this traffic as the Commodores of Wright and Higginson make tracks and try and get away from Shannon Wright, but he's having none of it. Now, Marwood, no, he didn't stop. He must have had a jump start. So he's come back out onto track and is now 7th in the running order. So he definitely has not performed his compulsory stop. He must have served a jump start. Now Termo is in for a stop, and that'll be because he has a bit of damage, I would imagine, after that opening lap contact. So a calamitous start to this race. And somehow one of the men who was involved in it is still facing the right direction. It's got a bit of damage on board, I would imagine. Shannon Wright has moved up ahead of John Wright, now for second place, with Brett Willis in 4th. Dane Joshua has recovered after his involvement in that opening melee. As they're moved back to 5th, overcommitted, well overcommitted by Brett Willis. Could not get the thing stopped, would not change direction at the pace that he was travelling. And through goes Joshua, through goes Walsh, through goes Marwood. And Brett Willis now back down to 7th place. Stephen Shadlow has recovered to 8th place. He was caught up in that melee as well. Now Dylan Call on our screen here is showing as P10. I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. I think there might be a timing glitch with this particular sequence here, because he is definitely not in 10th place unless he's missed a sector marshal's post or something somewhere. He is on lap 2. We're going to have to take a bit of a look at this. It is showing him as being 1 lap down now, so I don't know what's happened there for Dylan Call. That will have to be looked at post-race. This is showing him as 1 lap down, even though he has not stopped. He has indeed completed, and now says 2 laps. So Termo is a lap down to the, almost a lap down the race leader as well now, because he's been in and repaired some damage. Fastest man on the circuit last time around, Shannon Wright, now making a move on Higginson at turn 6. They will argue the point up to turn 7, and I think Shannon will just give a little bit of space here, just allow Higginson to take position on the inside through this corner, and then he'll just pick his opportunity. Not quite there, Shannon. He's very close, but not close enough to send it. And he's gnawing away on the green bumper bar on the rear of Higginson's Commodore. Probably that close he could read the serial number on it. He's looking for the move, looking where he can set this one up. The thing for Shannon Wright is he needs to think about where Higginson's placing the car and just outsmart him a little bit here. Higginson's driving a very nice line, and out of some of these corners he's quite easily able to get the power down. And just motor away. Be able to see it here. Go on board with Shannon Wright. Bit of a higher shot. Oh, into the pits he comes. Oh, did he get it stopped? That's another one. So Shannon Wright in. John Wright out of control. Big slide out of the final corner. Keeps it pointing the right direction. Goes through to second. Dane Joshua through to third. Terry Marwood, fastest lap of the race. He's moved himself up to position number 4. He was 5th. Wright coming in for his stop. He now finds himself in position 4. So despite coming in to have to tour the lane for what appears to have been a jump start, Terry Marwood has made quick time and made quick work of that time deficit, and only finds himself 12 seconds off the lead of this race, such as the pace that he's carrying. 3-second difference alone in pace on the last lap between Marwood and race leader Higginson. So he's playing himself back into a podium contention here, it's Terry Marwood. He's got John Wright to think about, he's got Dane Joshua to think about, and of course Higginson leading the race. So at the moment, the General's men are 1, 2 and 3 on the road, closest of which is this battle, which now goes to Dane Joshua, having picked off John Wright for second place. And John Wright is now about to have a face full of Terry Marwood's Volvo, and very easy pickings in the end for Terry at turn 13 and 14. Got a good run out of 13, and he's very firmly down the inside at 14, and now he'll set off in pursuit of the number 35 Sprint Gas VL Commodore. Tasman Motorsport inspired livery, one of many livery changes this week for drivers. Other livery changes, of course, going to John Wright's VL Commodore, who now comes into pit lane for his compulsory pit stop. And the other one, the number 27 of Brian Walsh, new livery for this weekend. So with Marwood in the pits, that's going to allow these guys to come through to positions 4 and 5 respectively. Sorry, John Wright in the pits, I mean. So Brett Willis and Brian Walsh resume their battle from race number 1. Number 27, Falcon, chasing down the number 20, Volvo 240. Brian Walsh will have a bit of familiarity with this track. One of my Mr. Australia boys that ran this converted track for their TCR series earlier in the year, so he'll know the direction that the track goes. The look will be pretty familiar. He's just got to put it all together. Behind them, Stephen Shadlow in the Volvo. So Brian Walsh is the blue meat in the Volvo sandwich right now. If we have a look at the lap times last time out, Shadlow with a 2:07.8. Brian Walsh did his PB for this particular race, 2:09.1. And Brett Willis with a 2:08. Oh, what was that going on there? So Brett Willis, so that was Shannon Wright, sorry, my bad. Shannon Wright going through at speed with Stephen Shadlow off the road. And Terry Marwood, just a few seconds ago, makes that move on Dane Joshua out of turn 15. Joshua argues the point, needs to leave a bit of space, and he does so on the exit of 17, so it's good driving all around. And he's going to be compromised here. Marwood has to drive it in a little bit harder, but comes out with the position. So Terry Marwood up to P2. 2:03.7 that last time around. Slightly slower, having been compromised by the Commodore ahead. Now is Joshua going to have a lunge at turn 1? Answer is no. Both these drivers, of course, yet to stop. So too Nathan Higginson. First man in the queue to have stopped is Shannon Wright, and he is 35 seconds off the race lead at this point. So for him, as he pumps in a 2:01.597, PB for Walsh, 2:08.8. For Shannon Wright, if our math is correct, with Higginson needing to stop and the transit time, including the compulsory stop, being around 42 to 43 seconds, he will be comfortably ahead come the driver's pit stop sequence having been cycled through. A couple of changes of position there as well. Wright moving ahead of Walsh. And looks like that was done probably down at turn 1, 2, 3. Now Shannon Wright in behind Brett Willis, and the other move that was there was John Wright going past Stephen Shadlow. Dylan Call now taker on pit road, and still showing that he is unfortunately a lap down, which is a bit strange considering he did take the start, so he may have missed a marshal's post or a timing sector at some point in the lap, and has had a lap discredited. So lap 6 about to be concluded, and Higginson in. That releases Terry Marwood to go through, and Dane Joshua in as well. So men out of positions 1 and 3 into the lane. Terry Marwood continues on his merry way. So now the next question of this is going to be where Shannon Wright feeds into all of this. He should be comfortably ahead of both the Commodores, and Higginson's actually just leaving the lane now. So our math is about right. He's going to be about 7 or so seconds ahead of Nathan Higginson, and Brett Willis is going to go through as well. Yet to stop, of course. So at the moment it's a Gold Coast Lawn Bowls Racing 1, 2 and 3. Marwood from Wright from Willis, but with Marwood and Willis yet to stop. Brian Walsh has even gone through on Nathan Higginson. Now that's interesting for Higginson, because he's now going to have to get past Brian Walsh for position, and depending on how this shakes out, this could be critical for Higgo. He was being, a bit of a late change of position there, a bit of a late move. Higginson safely through. About to say that was going to be critical for Higginson to clear Walsh pretty quickly, considering that Terry Marwood is yet to stop, and the transit time and the pit lane sequence being about 40 seconds, he needed to make hay while the sun was shining and then get back on track, put those fresh boots to good use and try and minimise that deficit, so when he finally does pit Terry Marwood, Higginson will then be promoted back into position 2. Marwood does own the fastest lap of the race, and he does decide to come in now, so he's taking the bait. Now, just saw Shadlow off at the final, Dylan Call off at the final corner. Gets the Toronto fight up and going again. So there's Terry Marwood in the pits, so race leader in. Shannon Wright will go through and will assume the race lead on corrected order. And all that matters now is where Brett Willis feeds into all of this as well. If he decides to come in, he's ahead of Higginson. Terry Marwood is on the move, so this is going to be very tight now. 80 km/h pit lane speed limit. Higginson on the front straight. Brett Willis goes through. Marwood's at the pit exit, but having a full head of steam is Nathan Higginson, and he rounds him up. So just like the Brian Walsh and Brett Willis exchange in race 1, another closely run thing for Nathan Higginson and Terry Marwood, but I think this is probably only a matter of time before Terry Marwood puts the move on, throws out the anchor at a place like turn 6 and gets the move done. Is he close enough for turn 6? Not on this occasion. But he's going to go the long way round, or was thinking about going the long way round, and that door was very firmly shut by Higginson, who pretty much runs the headlights on the whole entire time. And he's made a mistake there as well. He's gone wide at turn 9, and that compromised him for 10, and now Marwood's right with him. Here we go, same sort of thing Shannon Wright did in the early going of this race. Just latch onto the back of the car at turn 12, follow in the drag up to turn 13, get through this uphill 90-degree bend, and then if you can throw it out there, send it down the inside of turn 14, which he very nearly did. that would have been the prime passing move to get it done. What this is doing though is Brett Willis is sort of the cork and champagne bottle here, and now with Brett Willis going wide and Higginson sort of slightly compromised, Marwood pounces at turn 16 and will solidify that position at turn 17. But Higginson within striking distance here is close enough if he can follow Marwood all the way up to turn number 1. He might have another go, and he got a fantastic exit out of the final corner and breezes past the Volvo on the run down to turn 1. Easy pickings in the end. That's the horsepower advantage of the VL. And Dylan Cole's doing the right thing here, just trying to stay as far left as possible. Lets the race leaders through. Marwood is giving Higginson the real hurry up here. He is none too pleased about losing that second place. Now needs to find a way to make this stick. Late send? No. Not quite the late send at turn 6. And now through the right-hander. And the next right-hander. Bit of oversteer, bit of opposite corrective lock for Marwood as he fights this car through turns 7, 8, 9 and 10. And hung up on the curb. And lucky for Marwood, he didn't lose that much time to Higginson after getting hung up on the curb at turn 12. Having a look at the live chat for the stream. A couple of familiar names in there. And coming back to Scotty Merrill's comment about some average driving off the start, I tend to agree with you on that one. There was a car ahead, I think it was Stephen Shadlow, that missed the start. And as a result, that sort of concertinaed up all the cars behind, forced a couple of cars to dive to try and get around him, and there wasn't enough space for everybody to get through, but could have gone either side. Cool heads could have prevailed. It's just that a couple of guys took the wrong approach to that situation, and it was a little bit average in the end. Higginson actually turned his best lap on that particular occasion, a 2:01.8, and Terry's got plenty of time here, still got 6 laps to find a way past Nathan Higginson for position 2. The man in position 4, Dane Joshua, not closing on these guys. His best lap, 2:02.8, was some time ago, and finds himself quite a few seconds off the race lead here, and also off the back of Marwood for position 3. Now Brian Walsh is in to conserve his compulsory stop. There is the blue number 27 Falcon in the lane. He's going to lose a position to Brett Willis. There he goes. And Walsh is now on the move. Now Brett Willis, I believe, has already stopped. I'm just looking to see my notes here if he's stopped. Looks like he has. And Walsh will get going. He'll come out comfortably ahead of Stephen Shadlow, who's actually still yet to round the final corner. The man that's had a terrible race after being the victim or the innocent bystander in most of that opening start line calamity is Termo. Came in very early, got his compulsory stop over and done with. Probably repaired a lot of damage as well on that car. The important thing for him now is just to keep circulating and just to keep picking up some points. Still lapping respectably. Lap time that time around 2:03.550, and his best is a 2:02.496. So all about picking up points, finishing the night off, and then looking forward to tomorrow's 500 kilometre Bathurst 500, which he shares the car with Cam Rutledge. Now Marwood has finally gotten the job done on Nathan Higginson. Last lap times around, Higginson at 2:04 flat, Marwood at 2:01.77. So he mistake from Higginson somewhere on the lap. Oh, and he's making a couple of more mistakes as well, just over-driving it into some of these corners. You can just see it as we're watching Terry Marwood. Just, yeah, just oversteer, understeer, every sort of steer. And he is just starting to struggle a little bit. And you can see that he's offline in a couple of spots as well. Now the next question is behind him, whether or not Dane Joshua is in a position where he can start to eat into this advantage for another podium spot. He was just in the back of shot there. Oh, and if Higginson keeps doing things like that, it's going to continue to give time back to Dane Joshua. 2 wheels in the air at turn 9. And just a little bit frazzled, I think, here. Just needs to settle down. There's 4 more laps after this one until the checkered flag. He just needs to bring it home here. He's plugging in the math now. Shannon Wright leading this one. And a 3rd place for Nathan Higginson. The gap would come down to 14 points between now and the end of the night. He loses another spot. If Dane Joshua manages to catch up, down to 9. So it's important for Higginson to keep going here, and he's just gifting time now to Dane Joshua, who can see that car in his front line of sight now. There it is. He'll have that target there, and he'll be like saying to himself, right, if I can just keep pumping in these lap times and keep getting a little bit closer and a little bit closer each and every lap, Higo's starting to make mistakes. I might be able to wrestle one away here. Big difference in the time that time around. 2:07 for Higginson, 2:07 flat rather, and Dane Joshua 2:03.6. So the gap now just a hair over 4 seconds, and Dane Joshua can smell that 6th straight podium if he can just continue to plug away. The race has settled into a bit of a groove here. Everybody's got a fairly decent gap to the next car. The closest battle on track being the one that we're watching at the moment between the 2 VL drivers. Very comfortably out in front is Shannon Wright. I think these drivers can count their lucky stars. They're not running the GT circuit layout, which we've not seen used in Australian motorsport, or regular Australian motorsport at all, at 7.77 kilometres long. I think the drivers would probably be wanting to have a rather long night off rather than of that circuit. Looking at the math here as well, that circuit has some 35 corners overall. Instead of going off, continuing to the left, sorry, continuing to the right at the multi-corner right-hander, it branches off to the left, goes around the back side of the circuit, and then it rejoins on the straight between turns 12 and 13. Where the witches' hats are. So if we watch Shannon Wright pick those points up on the camera, goes through turn 5. And here's the part of the circuit we're referring to. So coming up with some lap traffic, that'll be Termo's Volvo. You can see here as he comes around turn 7 and 8, and just off to the left there's the witches' hats for the start of the GT circuit. And then that circuit continues on back the other way and around the back part of the circuit, and then re-emerges just to your left here. The second set of witches' hats right there. That's where the GT circuit joins back on to the main circuit. Some 8 or 9 different circuit layouts at the Bend Motorsport Park, not all of them used in regular competition. The only ones that have been used in the recent past. The international layout, commonly known as the supercars layout, and of course the West Circuit layout, which is a little bit shorter. Instead of turning left at turn 6, drivers continue straight on for another 40 or so metres, and then do a double right-hander, and it brings them out onto the short chute between turns 12 and 13, creating a little shorter lap. It's actually hosted, in its short lifetime, it has hosted a couple of major events besides supercars and the Asian Le Mans Series. There's also been the 2018 Improved Production Nationals were held here, and a number of cars actually had to fuel save in that particular one because the fuel cell size is mandated, and a number of drivers, especially in the over 2 litre class, were struggling to make the race distance for the final race of proceedings with the fuel loads they had. And that particular event was the last of Ray Hislop's many improved production titles aboard his BA Falcon improved production car, which is pretty much as close, I think, as you can get to a V8 supercar without being a supercar. Oop, Stephen Shadlow off the road. That's what position for Termo. So that's a spin for Shadlow at that part of the circuit. Oh, and who else is doing a bit of off-circuit action there? One of the Volvos in the lawn mowing stable. That was the race leader. So Shannon Wright, that's a rare mistake from Shannon Wright in the latter stages of this lap. We went and had a look to see what was going on, and as he passed his fellow Volvo driver of Stephen Shadlow, probably got a little bit complacent with himself and had a bit of a moment. So with 1 lap to go this time around, Shannon Wright with a 3.7 second margin, but he's starting to overdrive the car a little bit. But the battle we're interested in now, this battle for 3rd place has started to get really close, with Dave Joshua mowing down the advantage of Nathan Higginson in the last couple of minutes. And this battle looks like it's going to go to the wire. Brian Walsh has also had a moment. He's gotten passed by Termo. So 2 men that know each other pretty well. And Brian Walsh has now got a bit of work to do as well. So a couple of late changes for position here. And Shannon Wright has not lapped these guys yet either. So they are still on the lead lap, Termo and Brian Walsh. So they could have another lap to go, depending on what happens in the next 30 seconds or so, if they get lapped by the race leader here, who's got his own battle that he has to solve, because Marwood has been mowing down the advantage again in the last couple of laps. There was a big 7-second swing in the last one because of Shannon Wright's mistake. But even before that, Terry Marwood was taking a couple of tenths a lap out of Shannon Wright. At the moment, it won't be enough. And this battle now is less than a second. Dane Joshua, now within striking distance on the rev limiter. Both cars just drifting out to the edge of turn 10. And they're still fighting it all the way to the checkered flag here. Just ahead of them, Shannon Wright up at turn 14-15. This margin has really come down in the last 30 seconds or so. It's now 1.5 seconds. So Shannon Wright should be thanking his lucky stars after this one that off on the penultimate lap has not cost him any more time. And Walsh and Termo will get another lap, but Termo is cleared away from Brian here, so probably not going to happen there. Dylan Call doing more lawn mowing at the final corner, but it's a win for Shannon Wright in race 2. Terry Marwood home in 2nd place on this particular occasion. Fastest lap on the final lap as well for Terry Marwood, 2 minute .624. and Higginson's going to hang on. Higginson is going to hang on by the skin of his teeth. These two guys are teaming with each other for tomorrow's Automobilista Australia Bathurst 500. So finishing positions 3 and 4, but possibly going to have a little bit to answer for as the shenanigans already start. There might be a little bit more to come out of that after they were involved in that first lap incident off the start line. So the podium streak for Dane Joshua comes to an end at 5 with a 4th place finish in race 2. John Wright at the moment will come home for position number 5, comfortably position number 5. That'll be his 3rd 5th place finish of the season, and it's his equal best finish of the season. So he'll be pleased with that one, keeping himself out of harm's way and lucky to avoid not being collected in the process off the start line for race 2. Brett Willis brings the 3rd of the Gold Coast Lawn Bowls Racing Volvos home in 6th place. So for Brett Willis, that's a pair of 6th place finishes. As you can hear already, the engine's revving down at turn 1 here. And there they all are, getting their pirouetting groove on. Termo home in position number 7. Considering he was plumb last at one stage, I think you'll probably be relatively pleased with being able to recover to 7th place. It ends up meaning that Brian Walsh, who was in the thick of that one up until the very end, in fact he was in the thick of both races up until the bitter end, has finished in 8th. Stephen Shadlow and Dylan Call 9th and 10th. Dylan Call just out of shot there, so I think he's off to the side of the circuit. But we all love donuts, and donuts might not necessarily be just the flavour of the day for celebrating, but they might also be the food of choice as soon as these guys are finished for the night. But that is the finish of racing for tonight, and as we alluded to a few minutes ago, the final finishing positions in that race has meant that the gap that was 27 points at the start of the night between Nathan Higginson and Shannon Wright is now 14 points. And with a number of other drivers having some good finishes tonight, and the absence of Jamie Nankervis means that he is now being jumped by not one position as it was after race 1. He has now been jumped by Terry Marwood, Dane Joshua and John Wright. All move ahead of him in the point standings. And Dylan Call is now 27 points behind him. So a little bit of movement as a result of the last race in proceedings there. And the only man who we missed from race number 2 was Brian Munn, who did not start the second race after not finishing race number 1. Now, because we've got a little bit of other work to do for the broadcast coming up tomorrow for the AMS Oz Bathurst 500, we'll leave the podium interviews alone for tonight, and we will end it there. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you for ACADS at Queensland Raceway in 2 weeks from now. But if you're tuning in tomorrow, don't forget the broadcast for the AMS Oz Bathurst 500 will start at 12 midday Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Please drive safely. We'll see you then. Bye for now.